Welcome back, everyone, to Lone Oak Farms in Farming Simulator 17. You see directly ahead, we have finished harvesting the grass seed crop in field number 35. Now we are harvesting it in field 44, the one that kind of bends around the house. And I guess you can see the other videos where I describe a little bit about some of the modding that had to be done to get grass seed in the map. I don't know if there's any interest in talking that through further. You know, there was a mod I kind of started with that had some information in it, some clues that I built that in from to get it to work with Horseplay. I tell you what. This is a bad employee trying to take his tractor through the yard and eventually into the garden of the home place. Shame on him. Or her. Whoever's driving. Don't know who's driving. I think I've watched some other YouTubers and they have all sorts of names they give to the drivers of Horseplay. What's one of them? Reefy 1952. Oh, what is it that you call it? Oh, what is it? Crazy Pete and Drunken Charles for all the hired help. Maybe it isn't just Horseplay. Maybe it's just the hired help in general. Yeah, since they don't know how to do the job or have human eyes on it. Things you don't expect. Maybe a few other comments I would make. I keep coming back to this, and again, I apologize. All my commentary is pretty sporadic on these. I try to share as memories come to me, and I made a few notes too of various things, and sometimes I hit the notes, sometimes I don't. But to try to take it somewhat in order, I know I've commented previously on some of the morning ritual, if you will, when you know, you're servicing the combines, getting them ready for the day. Don't know that I ever fully finished that. Because I got to start to thinking of, you know, all the screw-ups that I had on the farm, in which there have been many. And fortunately, most of them you walk away from and you don't get yourself hurt. There's a few that could be considered quite dangerous, and you'd be fortunate and lucky, you know, to walk away from them. Um, and that's just part of life on the farm. It isn't always the safest place given the machinery you're around and whatnot. But going back to the morning ritual, you know, some of these were just mundane things, you know, screw up, and I can't remember if I've mentioned them here. I think I mentioned maybe on another video. But, you know, one of them was to fuel up. Well, I think I showed a picture in a previous video of the pickup truck that we used, and it had this tank in the back of it, you know, that would hold a certain amount of diesel. And it had a pump, you know, we didn't have to run it by hand. There was a switch you would flip, and voila, the fuel would come out nice into the combine. But the nozzle that was on the hose, it wasn't like the nozzles that are in a modern gas station, you know, where you hook it up into your car, you get it going, and then it automatically turns off when the tank is full, right? You know, if there's something that backs up into it, if it's working, and it stops the nozzle from putting more fuel in there. Well, these particular nozzles didn't have that mechanism, so a lot of the time when we were servicing the combines in the field, you know, it was inefficient just to sit there and hold the nozzle while you're fueling it up and just wait. You know, it's like, no, there was other things you had to do, like greasing the joints on the combine, or the bearings and what have you, all the grease zerks. You know, there was blowing out the radiators. There was all kinds of other things you could do while the combine was fueling up. Well, and that all was fine and dandy as long as you remembered to periodically go look at your fuel situation, and hopefully you weren't overfilling. And, well, I think you can imagine what happened more than once to me and to some others. You know, what we would do is put fuel cap of the combine's fuel tank. We would put it under the lever on the nozzle, so it would hold it in the open position so fuel would rush into the tank. So there was nothing that was going to stop that other than a human hand. And so if you weren't paying attention, well, you had fuel burping up on the ground, diesel going everywhere, mainly on the combine. We're not talking about a major environmental disaster, but obviously, especially today, fuel prices they are today. I mean, that's a horrendous waste for something like that to happen. But back in the day, it was still a waste, even though fuel wasn't nearly as expensive as it is now. But it sometimes would happen, and yeah, I got chewed out a time or two over that kind of monkey shine where I just wasn't paying close enough attention. And the grease and everything, I mean, maybe this has improved in time. I guess it's been a while since I've, serviced a machine of any kind and had to grease it, but that is just madly sticky, yucky stuff, and no matter how careful a guy would try to be, you would get it all over your hands, and, invariably some of those grease zerks, I mean, it's like you had to have the grease gun perfectly lined up on the stupid thing, or else the grease would just burp out and go all over the place on your hands and wouldn't get down into the zerk, to accomplish, whatever it was supposed to do. Oops, we're having some troubles here. Let's try that again. There we go. Barely clears the roof of our little tractor here. Backing up and head forward. So anyway, I mean, we would go around with the grease gun and, even changing the grease out. I know some guys anymore have a machine with this, maybe it's on a 5-gallon bucket of grease, and there's a pump that mechanically pulls it out of it, and you pump it through this gun into the zerks, so you don't have to worry about changing out all these tubes. But we had tons and tons of tubes of grease, and when you ran out of one, you had to put a new one in. It seemed like it would find your hands, sure as shoot. And so, yeah, a lot of times I know I'd wipe the grease off on the tire. We'd have all these towels going around. It seems like my hands were just black all harvest season from handling this kind of stuff. Just messy, sticky stuff. I mean, it's kind of a memory that comes back. I mean, there's other oils too. Always checking the level, the oil, hydraulic or otherwise, or that of the hydrostat drives on those combines. Just lots of opportunity to get grime on your hands. Back on the fuel tank thing, I think I've described this on another video, but probably not in this series. Another blooper I did on the farm was I lost a fuel cap. As just the stupid things you do as a kid where you aren't thinking about the repercussions of your actions or not paying close enough attention. So I didn't overfill the fuel. That wasn't the problem this time. Forgetfulness and inattention to details was what the problem was. But I would pull the fuel cap off, and what I did is I put it on the hood of the pickup. Well, when I was done fueling up, I wound the hose up, and then all the combines were parked in a row, and I hopped back in the truck, and I drove to the other one. And I was being a little zippy with it, because, it was kind of fun to spin the tires in the straw. And all of a sudden I realized as I parked it by the next combine, where did the fuel cap go that was sitting on the hood that I knew I needed to put back on the other combine? I think this was a 6602. Well, oh my goodness, we looked all over, and in those days, all the straw was spread all over the ground, and where we had parked the combines for servicing that night, was in an area we'd already combined. Obviously we wouldn't put it in an area we hadn't, over the top of the windrows. So the cap had fallen off, when I drove the pickup to a different spot, and we couldn't find it. For all I know, I drove over the top of it and ground it into the soil. We never did find it, and this was the middle of harvest. It was, maybe in retrospect, knowing what kind of damage it would cause, maybe we would have taken time to go get a new fuel cap. I'm not sure why my uncles didn't send me to go get one, but for whatever reason they didn't. And what they did instead is they took a rag, I think, and jammed it in the top of the fuel tank and tried to get it tight or whatever, so that no corruption or whatever could get in there. But the fuel tank, kind of where it sits, is it's on the back right-hand side of the machine. I don't know that it is for this Fiat Agri, but kind of right back, where there's this little. Let's scroll back here. Just below, like where this ladder would be, there would be a tank on the John Deere's. That's kind of where the fuel tank was. And as you can see, there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of straw, there's a lot of chaff going on back here, right by the fuel tank, which would have been hanging open all day long. Well, I say open, it had the rag in it, but what a fiasco. I mean, that was a really bad move on my part, and it's one of those things. Like I said, I could pass it off as being a dumb kid, but it costs real time and real money that, a blooper like that. And I'm just so glad I have wonderful uncles, and, that they put up with a certain amount of that. And, I just look back on that, and those are things that can hurt someone financially, but it wasn't that they fired me. I'm not sure what I would have had to do to literally get fired from the farm. Maybe they would have wanted to, but anytime it's when there's family working for you, um, maybe that's a little harder to do. I don't know. I'm sure they could have found better hired help than me. I just appreciate them. They're wonderful men, and yeah, they could chew me out when I deserved it, but at the end of the day, they probably don't even remember that now. They don't have that combine anymore, but I'll tell you what, I've never forgotten, and I don't think I have forgotten since. Anytime I've ever fueled something up, I fastidiously think about the fuel cap and know that it's going to go back on. And maybe that's sometimes just brutally how you learn some lessons in life. You make mistakes, and hopefully they're not mistakes that kill you, and you learn your lesson and try to behave differently in the future. So and that play, that machine, I guess I need to finish that part off. I don't think it was so much that particular day. It got through that fuel tank, but for years afterwards, this particular combine would just randomly die. Sometimes, in the middle of when you had it full throttle and you were combining, the thing would die on you. And the reason is it still had straw in the fuel tank, and it just took years to get all that back out. One of my cousins was the one that ran that machine. Maybe they should have made me run it to pay for making such a stupid blooper. But I remember riding with him one time, and it was, like I say, full throttle, and all of a sudden the thing just up and died in the field, and I was like, well, what the world's that? And he says, oh, it's the fuel thing again. And so he and I went out there, and there's this little sediment bulb under the fuel tank that whenever this happened, you'd go clean the thing out and remove straws and try to, clean the lines out as best you could in the field. Start her back up and continue, but that happened time and time again, and that's lost efficiency in the field and makes a long day even longer, all because of a little bit of haste and inattention at the wrong time. One example of many for me. So I don't know that I have any other stories from, I'm sure there's probably some from, getting the machines ready. It was, and I don't know how much to say about all this, but a lot of the memories, as much as I enjoyed the farm, probably the reason that it so sticks to my soul is because it's integrated with my family and the relationships, that I have there, whether it's my uncles or my cousins, that I worked with, that, like I say, these are genuinely good men, and when you work for someone who's good, who has your best interest in mind, who care for you, um, that's the best kind of work conditions that you could ever hope to have, right? So I don't know, and maybe that just helps leave all the more indelible of an imprint, my experiences that I had up there, to where, and everybody's family's family, and you're going to have your own memories that maybe are meaningful to you, and I would have mine that means something to me, may not mean anything to someone else, but just was fun. The work was hard and good, and but fun at the same time, and just something I so enjoy to look forward to going up there. Like right now, I mean, I'm a night owl. It isn't always easy for me to get up in the morning, but I tell you what, back on the farm, it didn't seem like a burden to be there at 6 a.m. to get started for the day because I couldn't wait to get there. So just one of those things, and part of it was being there with family, and maybe I could comment on the ad here now too. My I started working up there. Let me see here. I think I started working up there a little in my 8th grade year of school. So after the 8th grade, let's see, I would have been what age? 13? I think that's 13 years old. And that summer, I mean, there was a tragedy in the family. My grandmother died. She died of a heart attack in church and never revived. I think she had, I don't know, she had rheumatic fever when she was younger. Maybe it was in her childbearing years, and I may have damaged her heart somehow. I'm not real sure on the particulars. But she died in the middle of grassy harvest in the summer of, well, I don't remember what year it was. All I remember is my 8th grade year. So, and maybe I commented on this in another video. Farmers, for as independent a group as they are, for as much they will compete with each other, when a tragedy happens in your neighbors, you go help your neighbors. That's just what you do. And so, I mean, I remember during that time, during harvest, there were, they had, instead of their usual, maybe they only had 2 combines in, I don't recall. There maybe was 10 of them in the field, as the neighbors kind of came together to help my grandfather get the harvest in and take care of it so he could grieve, the loss of his wife. And I had no idea the changes that would come, most of which I won't get into here, but a year, 2 later, whatever, maybe a year later, he remarried another woman, and so she became my step grandmother, if you will. And that's right about the time period when I started working full summers at the Lone Oak Farm. It was freshman year, high school, and summers out of school, and that's when I really started working up there. But not only did I work up there, I basically lived up there the whole summer. And looking back on that, as a kid, I didn't hardly, oh, hey, look at this, bumper harvest. Well, that's a pretty low bar to get a bumper harvest. Barely harvest one field and not even half of another. But I'll take it. But I basically lived up there in this house. It didn't quite look like that back then. It didn't have this back area on there. But I had, I lived in the basement. I think that's where my room was. Occasionally I was upstairs, I think, wherever they could put me. But like I say, as a kid, I didn't really give that much thought, and I'll have to ask my parents about that someday. I'm thinking about my own kids, and granted, this was with family, but sending your kid off to someone else, and basically what I would do is I would be up there basically every day of the week except Saturday night. Sunday, of course, we went to church, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I mean, we were working, and then Saturday night, I would be taken home somehow. Someone would give me a ride home. I didn't have my own vehicle. I couldn't drive legally, although I was driving plenty of stuff on the farm illegally. But I think that for some of the farm activity, they would look the other way. But I just lived up there. My new step grandmother would make all of our meals and would bring them to us in the field or pack lunches for us. She took care of my laundry. I mean, she really did a ton for me. And looking back, I mean, again, this is just kid stuff that maybe you don't think about until you're an adult and you see how much work a lot of that stuff can be. I'm positive I never adequately thanked her enough for doing that so regularly, so faithfully, um, and just so kindly to just help us out. And it wasn't just me; it was my cousins. It was my uncles who were both single at the time and still living at home while they were getting their startup farming and whatnot. Grandma just kind of took care of us like a wonderful woman that she is, and there's as many memories about all those kinds of things. It was kind of my family away from my family. I had five or four brothers and two sisters at home too, but I spent just so much time up here, and I think part of it was for a very practical reason. Like I mentioned, I didn't have a vehicle. The family, well, it wasn't legal for me to drive at that point. It would be 2 more years before I'd be licensed. But even then, I still didn't have my own vehicle. I think then about when I started driving, there periodically a car would be free, or I still had to bum rides to places or whatever. So it was, from a practical perspective, it was helpful for me to just stay up there. And I don't know what all they had to agree to with, between my parents and grandma and grandpa just to take care of me, while I was up there. But honestly, I didn't hardly even give it a thought. It was just, what I did. We stayed up there and worked and ate and slept and did everything else up there at the same time too. And looking back, I see how much I took for granted that that isn't normal. You usually don't go stay in your employer's home and eat their food and get taken care of. So the blessings, one of the blessings of family, I guess. But that's kind of where I was. So I mean, there was tons of, I know when I think of my own family here at home, my favorite time of day, um, in terms of being a dad and a husband, with kids still at home and whatnot, my favorite time of day is to come home from work and to sit at the dinner tables of family. Bar none. There's no other time of day so precious to me as that. And I think it's because that's the time when all the family can be together, where we talk, we communicate with one another how the day has gone, where you can laugh and be silly, you can be yourself, and nobody cares because we all know each other and we love each other. And I'm not trying to say, we're perfect or anything. Believe me, we're not. But I'm just saying that time is particularly special to me as a dad and as a man. And to get that kind of in a different context, if you will, in my home away from home, if you will, when I worked on Lone Oak. And I didn't do that the whole time. It was mainly the first 3 years maybe that I did that before I had a regular vehicle that I could go home and stay at home and be with my family there. But those were special times, and there was many evenings where it there was so much goofing off, just laughing and enjoying time with my cousins that just made the time up there all the more meaningful and special to me, and just was bonding. I mean, to this day, my cousins, the ones that I worked with, James and Joe were their names. They live in central Illinois. They grew up on a corn and soybean farm, and there must not be much going on with corn and soybeans, that particular time of the year that they were able to come out for a few weeks to help with the harvest. Some of it, I don't remember how many weeks they were able to come out. But, I have a lot of extended family that lives back in Illinois or kind of in different areas, and I gotta just be honest. I mean, I might be their first cousin, or they might be an aunt or uncle, but I don't know them that well because of proximity. We're here, they're back there, and You know, if you aren't close, it's kind of hard to develop those relationships. But those two particular cousins, you know, I don't care where I may see them or how long it's been since I've seen them. All I know is whenever I see them, we go immediately back to right where we were because we spent so much time together on the farm. It's, you know, it's as if we've never been apart. You know, yeah, there's been life happen in between, but hopefully you know what I mean. Versus someone you don't know very well, and there's kind of that awkwardness, even if you're family, and it takes a while to, well, just to get acquainted. And, you know, I don't feel that you know, whether it's with my cousins or my uncles, you know, that work on the farm up here, we just spend so much time and we're in each other's hair so much of the time that, yeah, there's just a comfort there that's pretty special and makes these memories stand out to me all the more. Like I say, and kind of an indelible imprint to the soul. And there's something about, I don't know if it's about eating together. Maybe that's part of what it does. When you're forced to slow down, you feed your face with good food, and you're forced to talk. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before. You know, I grew up in a home where we didn't have a television or that kind of entertainment around. Um, and it isn't because we couldn't afford it. It was a choice, you know, my parents made. And I've continued it. We don't have a television in our home for our kids. Um, it just isn't necessary. And so when you don't have something entertaining to do or program for you, you find other ways to amuse yourself. And some of it, I think, is the lost art of conversation, you know, communication. And nowadays, I mean, it was way different then. You know, we didn't have the cell phones and these little squares that people anymore, you know, spend so much time, uh, you know, texting or whatever on. It's makes me wonder, you know, what the future holds on all that. But even back in the day, it wasn't even just cell phones changing or whatever. You know, there's lots of families that, for whatever reason, choices they made, they didn't have a family dinner hour, and you know, each to their own, each to their own. But I think they missed out on some things, and so we've tried to keep that in our family where we have a dinner time at least once a day when we can come together as a family and reacquaint ourselves with each other and figure out why we're all together on this big world and what we can do about it. How's our combine doing? Oh, paused, waiting for horseplay. You know, I wonder in the mod, I, hmm, I wonder if it produces more seed than it should. You know, this is all part of the balancing act. Whenever you add a crop or something to the game, to figure out how do you make it as realistic as possible, and more than just realism, how do you make it playable? You know, to where it's realistic enough, but not so realistic that you're going broke. I mean, there's another map I'm playing right now that is seriously, I'm worried that I may go bankrupt for the first time in, in this silly game, Farming Simulator, because it's so rotten tough the way the map author set it up. So maybe there's a little bit more grass seed that comes versus what would actually be there in reality, but maybe it's good enough. Who's to say? But those are things you could tweak, you know, as you add additional crops and fill types to a map. You can tweak how much comes into your combine. You can say the yield, basically, I think it's reduced to liters per square meter, I believe, so that when it's harvested in game, each square meter that it goes over, as long as you've done everything right, you know, in terms of plowing and fertilizing and all that jazz. There's a certain liters per square meter that will be harvested. Well, you can set that as high as you want. So if we wanted to, we can make this combine go 10 feet and be full. But obviously that wouldn't be realistic. Well, what is realistic to me is I glance at the clock and another half hour has come and gone, and the harvest continues. So, what to say, what to say? I think here we get done with the outer round, right? And he's probably going to speed drive to the next area. Picking up his header. I don't think, in real life you could pick up all these windrows, but I don't think it will in the game. So, as soon as he starts this other windrow, I think I'm gonna call it a video and send it off to YouTube. There we go. Actually, it's probably 2 windrows, maybe a little narrow one. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking your valuable time to stop by and listen to the musings of a man that's getting older and older. A lot of this has been left far in the past. But thank you for coming and seeing this anyways. We just enjoy this map full of Bill made, and I enjoy reminiscing over a farm that I was privileged to be a part of in my growing up years. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye for now.